Hello and good evening to all of you. Hello and good evening to all of you. Okay, so hope this question is visible to all of you. Hello and good evening to all of you. Okay, so hope this. Yes, let us look at some of the questions. So, potential area. So, let me first create some space here. Okay. So, this question is with respect to antimicrobial resistance is one of the top 10 global public health threats facing humanity. So, this is a statement which has been given by WHO itself. So, we have just picked up that statement, and this becomes a context for this question. So, this topic of AMR is very important, and it is relevant from exam point of view from past many years. So in fact they have asked mains related questions on AMR previously also. Now there is a high probability that they might ask a question based on AMR again. So here this time they might ask some other dimension of AMR. So we first need to understand what is AMR, antimicrobial resistance. What do you understand by AMR? What are the available mechanisms to tackle AMR and critically analyze? So, if we look at the structure of the question, so first of all, I hope your preparation is going well if you're writing mains this year. Let us look at the structure, or what are the various subparts that you need to address in this question. What can you write as an introduction here? Introduction to this question. What can you write as an introduction? Introduction of antimicrobial resistance. Are you all aware about this topic, antimicrobial resistance? See, these answer sessions, answer writing sessions will help you if you have some basic idea. If you have some basic idea, then we can delve into the answer writing. Otherwise it will take a lot of time to explain you all the concept related to AMR. Okay, so let us try to see how we can address this question. So after introduction, see it, this question appears to be a very straightforward type of question. So antimicrobial resistance is one of the top 10 global public health threats facing humanity. So either in introduction you can go by a simple definition of what is AMR. What is AMR? So you can explain this. So or you can give a simple understanding of your AMR. So that could be an introduction. And it is saying that it has become one of the top 10 global public health threats facing humanity. So here you can go for elaboration of how or what is the possible negative effect, or how it is a public health threat, how or why it is a public health threat, why it is a public health threat. You can give some arguments here. So you can make a subheading, you can make a subheading, and then you can give the argument for why this can be a great or one among the top 10 public health threat. Now here, what do you understand by AMR? So in fact, in these two parts only you are able to give your understanding of AMR. So if you feel, if you want to write more about AMR, then you can go for further description. But here you can jump to this part, what are the available mechanisms to tackle AMR. So here you need to write some of the available mechanisms to tackle AMR. Available mechanisms. So what you can do in this, you can bifurcate that what are the global efforts in this and what are, let us say, Indian efforts to tackle AMR. What are the global efforts and what are the Indian efforts? So in this way you can bifurcate. And then this question has a tail word which says critically analyze. So this tail word, critically analyze, it means that you can go for critical analysis of the efforts that we have already taken, or whatever plan is. So you can criticize that, or you can even appreciate that, or in general you can mention that why it is still persisting, why AMR is persisting. So it is basically a critical evaluation. So in this part you have to do the critical evaluation. So basically you can use a subheading like this. So issues involved in tackling AMR, or why it is persisting, that you can mention. And then you can give a conclusion. Yes, are you all aware about AMR? What is AMR? Antimicrobial resistance. Or you would have heard about antibiotic resistance. Have you heard about antibiotic resistance? Yes. Yes, can anybody tell what is antibiotic resistance? See, I want you that you participate. So if you participate, then this learning process will become much more interesting, and you'll gain a lot through that process also. So let us say, even if you do not know a lot about antibiotic resistance, still you can chip in and you can give your point of view. So antibiotic resistance. So what do you mean by antibiotic resistance? So, and what are, first of all, antibiotics, or what are antimicrobials? Antimicrobials are your medicines. They are your drugs which are designed to kill the microbes. They are drugs which are designed to kill microbes. So what are the microbes? So broadly we classify microbes as your bacteria, your virus, fungi, and protozoa. So medicines which are designed to kill the microbes, they are called as antimicrobials. So what is antimicrobial resistance then? So antimicrobial resistance is, it means that the bacteria, so we have developed, let us say, medicines for bacteria, medicines to kill bacteria, medicines to kill virus, medicines to kill fungi, medicines to kill protozoa. So you would have taken, many of us, they generally take antibiotics even in common cough and cold. During COVID times, everybody or most of us would have taken some antibiotic or antiviral drug. So if you get some skin disease, so you take antifungal creams also, or you often take antifungal medication also. Protozoa, so malaria is caused by protozoa, so to kill the malarial this microbe, we use antiprotozoa medicines also. So what we are saying, that we have developed medicines to kill these microbes, but what is also happening, that these microbes are evolving and they are becoming resistant to these medicines, and this phenomena is referred as antimicrobial resistance. I hope this is clear. So antimicrobial resistance, it means that the microbes are becoming resistant to the antimicrobials, that are drugs that have been developed to kill them. So why this is a concern? Why WHO is saying that it is one of the top 10 global public health threats facing humanity? So why it is a concern? Why it is a concern? So in order to highlight this portion, or if you want to highlight this part, you can give some logical arguments, or you can also give some reports. You can also cite some reports. So those reports can highlight the magnanimity of this particular problem, that AMR is a big threat. So here it is already saying that it is one of the top 10 global public health threats. You can use other reports to justify this. So there are many reports on this. So there is this Graham report. So Graham report, that is global research on antimicrobial resistance. So they had done a study in 2021, and what they found, that in 2019, so because of antimicrobial resistance, around 49.3 lakh of people, 3 lakh 49.3 lakh people died because of this, and these were direct deaths. It means the AMR itself was responsible. It also said that in 2019 it led to around 12.1 lakh, sorry, this was indirect death, and this was direct deaths. So this report, you can point it out, that this report is saying that so many people are dying because of antimicrobial resistance. Another report of UN, so UN says that it gives a projection that by 2050 the world will see 10 million annual deaths, 10 million annual deaths because of AMR, because of AMR. So let me just shift this down. So the UN report says that by 2050 the world will see around 10 million annual deaths. Another report that you can mention is that of ICMR. ICMR, that is Indian Council of Medical Research, it also did a study on hospitals or in hospitals. So after COVID, it studied around 10 hospitals, and in its study, it found that the COVID patients have become resistant to antimicrobials. So that is a cause of concern. WHO, in one of its report, it also says that the world is moving towards a post antibiotic era. The world is moving towards post antibiotic era. Post antibiotic era. Why it is saying that the world is moving towards post antibiotic era? It is because uh, in its report itself, it is saying that the common infections and common injuries, so because of common infections and common injuries which we were able to treat because of the help of antimicrobials, so we will not be able to treat them. Why? Because these microbes, these bacteria, virus and fungi, protozoa, they will become resistant. So we were able to protect millions of people because of these antimicrobials that we had developed. But now these bacteria, virus, because they will become resistant, they will once again kill people. So people might lose life even in simple injuries and infections. So that is a cause of concern. So you can use some of the reports to bring out this aspect of the question, that what that it is a top 10 public health threats facing humanity. You can also give some logical arguments in that sense, that if the microbes are becoming resistant, so our expenditure on health will increase. So even now in India, the what we say, out of pocket expenditure, out of pocket expenditure on health. So what is this out of pocket expenditure term? So out of pocket, it means like if you go in Scandinavian countries, so if somebody falls ill, and if let us say the treatment costed around 100 rupees, so if the treatment costed 100 rupees, the patient does not have to pay anything, the government actually bears that cost. So the out of pocket expenditure in Scandinavian countries is zero. But in case of India, the out of pocket expenditure is around 67%, which is one of the highest globally. It means that Indians are already spending a lot on health. Now, if microbes, they become resistant, then the out of pocket expenditure and even government expenditure will increase manyfold. That is a cause of concern. So it will directly affect the health of our population. So we are talking about demographic dividend. So demographic dividend, when can we reap the benefit of the demographic dividend? Only if the demography is healthy. Only if the demography is healthy, if we can ensure good health of the demography, can we reap the demographic dividend. But this antimicrobial resistance can spoil that also. So it will when people will fall sick, their recovery time will increase if microbes are becoming resistant. So hospital expenditure will increase, their working period will reduce, or working hours will reduce. So overall their income will be hit. So while they are sick, they will obviously not be able to earn. So all these could impact us. So you can use those arguments also, or you can use some of the reports to highlight this issue. Okay, now let us look at, so what do you understand by AMR? So this actually what you can say, that you can discuss the reasons of AMR in this part. If you feel that if you have space, then in brief you can mention the reasons of AMR, antimicrobial resistance. So what do you think are the reasons for AMR? Why do you think, let us just focus on, let us say, bacteria. Why do you think bacterias are becoming resistant? Why bacterias are becoming resistant? why bacteria are becoming resistant? Yes. So if you go to your doctors, your doctors would say that you should complete your antibiotic course. Why do they say so, that you should complete your antibiotic course? I see some people are live, but they are just watching. They are not trying to interact. Okay, and whenever I ask questions, so students they leave. That is okay. I understand. Okay, so reasons of AMR. See, bacterias or any microbe, they naturally evolve. So if you use something to kill them, then they will naturally evolve and they will become resistant. But what is happening is that we are making them evolve faster. We are making them evolve faster, and because of that, there is a concern. So how are we making the bacteria evolve faster? So let us look at the different scenarios. If you look at the patients themselves, or let us talk about ourselves. So patients, we are responsible. Why? Because we do not complete the dosage. If you do not complete the dosage, let us say you had a dosage for 5 days, and if you took the antibiotic for 3 days only, it means you might have killed most of the bacteria, but some bacteria might have remained in your body, and they might pass out from your body, and they will recover, and they will gain strength, and they will become resistant to antibiotics. So not completing your dosage is a very big reason for your antimicrobial resistant. Also, WHO says that sharing of antibiotics or antimicrobials is also a concern in India. So not completing the dosage or sharing of antibiotics, not maintaining proper health and hygiene at the patient level is also a concern. Why? Because see, health poor health and hygiene condition is good condition for the microbes to multiply. So if you are living in an unhealthy environment or in an unhygienic place, so it is a good place for the bacteria, virus, fungi and protozoa to grow and multiply and evolve. So maintaining poor health and hygiene is also helping them evolve faster. Now if you look at the doctors, how they are responsible. So see, in this question you may not you need not write so many reasons, because the demand of the question is not as such. So you can quickly mention some of the reasons in short. So doctors are responsible because see, patients, first of all, patients are also responsible in one more dimension, that they go for self prescription. Everybody is a doctor in themselves, so we think that we need not go to the doctors, we will take medication on ourselves, or we have the knowledge, proper knowledge, so we tend to take medication without doctor's consultation, or without getting the consultation slip, or without prescription, what do you say? So doctors are responsible. Doctors are also in a way responsible, but see, nowadays they generally form a nexus with the pharma companies or your pharmacist shop. So they tend to prescribe antibiotics even when there is no need for that. So it is not that all doctors do that, but there is definitely nexus between some doctors, and they do this as a practice. So this is also a problem. Why? Because it leads to it creates a demand for antibiotics, and people are taking more antibiotics. So that is why you are forcing the bacteria or the antimicrobials to evolve or become resistant. So in that way they are responsible. They also form some nexus with the pharma companies, so they tend to over prescribe also. They would write medication or antibiotics without going for proper diagnosis also. So that can be a cause of antimicrobial resistance. Now pharma companies are also responsible, because they generally use these microbes to create some bioenzymes, some enzymes. So these companies, they extract some enzymes from bacteria, virus, fungi, protozoa to make some medication or to make vaccines. Now if these bacteria, virus, fungi and protozoa, if they are left in wastewater without treatment, then they can, again multiply, regain strength, and again they will become resistant to the antibiotics. So no, not proper treatment of the effluents. So if the effluents are not treated well by the pharma companies, then also this could be a problem. So your medical shops, they are also responsible. Why? Because uh, see, they shouldn't be selling antibiotics or antimicrobials without doctor's prescription, but they do sell without doctor's prescription, and that is a problem because there is easy availability of these antimicrobials. So more availability of antimicrobials, so more people will use it, and that itself becomes a problem. So medical shops might be driven by profit motive, so they wouldn't deny any person who is asking for medication. So they would give medication without doctor's prescription also, and that is a cause of concern. In rural areas, you would have heard about quacks or the fake doctors. So they often tend to use more antibiotics because they do not have proper knowledge of medicine. So that can be also a problem. So see, there are many other reasons also, like your meat industry. So your meat industry, especially the chicken or the poultry industry, so they use antibiotics. One of the misuse of antibiotics is that if you give antibiotics to your chicken or poultry, they grow very quickly, so they gain weight very quickly. So there, it is a practice among meat industry players that they use antibiotics to grow these chicken or poultry. And because the meat industry, they do not follow proper health and hygiene conditions, so these animals, they often fall sick, and to treat them, they resort obviously to antimicrobials. So that again enters our food cycle or food chain, and that becomes a problem, or that becomes a reason for AMR also. So these are your reasons for why the microbes are becoming resistant. So during COVID times also, it has been pointed out by WHO and ICMR also that excess use of sanitizers and disinfectants have also led to AMR. Why? Because we are always trying to kill your, let us say, a virus, but along with the virus, you're killing bacteria, you're killing fungi, you're killing protozoa. So you are forcing them to evolve further and further, and that is why they are becoming resistant. So let us look at the another aspect of this question. So it is asking, what are the available mechanisms to tackle AMR? What are the available mechanisms? What are the available mechanisms? Available mechanisms, you can just mention some of the global and some of the available mechanisms. Let me just bring out a slide that I had. Okay, so in this you can see the available mechanisms. So let me just highlight it. So these are your available mechanisms. So in available mechanisms, so we have national level mechanisms and then we have global level mechanisms. So in national level mechanisms, so we have or ICMR. This is a body which has now become very popular. It has set up a national antimicrobial surveillance network. So there is a network which has been set up to keep a surveillance over this. And ICMR has started what is known as antibiotic stewardship program. So this program, it is also a global movement that is going on, because hospitals, they tend to use excessive antibiotics or antimicrobials. So this program wants to reduce the amount of antibiotics or antimicrobials that are being used in hospitals. So there is this red line campaign. So this red line campaign is to discourage the over the counter sale of antibiotics. Over the counter sale of antibiotics, so it means that these antibiotics are available to you without doctor's prescription. It shouldn't be available over the counter. It should be available to you only after doctor's prescription. So in medicines, you would have seen there are some red markers or a red strip is drawn, which highlights that this is a drug which you shouldn't buy without doctor's prescription. So it is like a visible marker to convey to you that you shouldn't buy this medication without doctor's prescription. It has CDSCO, that is Central Drug Standards and Control Organization, has gone for scheduling of your scheduling of drugs. Scheduling of drugs means there are a lot of drugs that we have. Scheduling means we are placing some of the drugs, some of the critical drugs that are antimicrobials in some list, and if those drugs are present on those list, then what is the idea that you won't be able to get it without doctor's prescription. So this scheduling is also a way to restrict the supply of your antimicrobials, but often these things are not working properly. So you have the red line campaign, you have scheduling, but still you would see that you'll go to a medical shop and you can easily get your antibiotics without doctor's prescription. So government has capped the maximum level of drugs that can be used in the meat industry. So it has done capping also. So government has started a 2011 national policy on AMR to overview, study and enforce the norms. So these are some of the mechanisms. You can pick and choose and you can mention some of the mechanisms. Now what are global level mechanisms? So you can just mention some of the names here, like WHO's GAP program, WHO's GLASS program. So GAP program is it helps the countries to develop national action plan to tackle AMR. GLASS is Global Antimicrobial Research and Surveillance System to fill knowledge gaps and develop strategies. WOW is basically an anti-microbial awareness week, and then we have also created AMR Action Fund has also been created. So these are some of the mechanisms. Now in the next part in this question, so what we are saying that what are the available mechanisms to tackle AMR that we have seen. Now critically analyze. So critically analyze, here you can go for analysis of the mechanisms itself or why this problem is still persisting. So what we are doing here is that we'll go for further analysis and we'll see that why this is persisting. So so that is what we are doing in this part. So here we are saying, however, challenges still persist. So the challenge first, let us look at some of the implementation issues. So we have gone for scheduling of drugs. So scheduling drugs still available over the counter, but what we see that over the counter drugs are still available at the medical shops. So why this is available? Because of lackadaisical approach of the implementing authorities. So at the district level, there is no good control over these medical shops. So then there is poor oversight over quacks. Quacks are basically the fake doctors, mostly in rural areas, but you will also see in urban areas. But this also points out towards a poor health system that India has, specifically in rural areas, in the unserved areas, because the qualified doctors, the MBBS doctors, they do not prefer to go to medical to do not prefer to go to rural areas. There could be their reasons, there could be genuine reasons for them that they do not want to locate to rural areas, because the amenities and facilities that they require to live a lifestyle of their standard might not be possible in rural areas. So they might not be inclined to go to rural areas. So there is always a dearth of qualified professionals in the rural areas. So because of that dearth, or because of that gap, so there are people who try to fill up that gap. They do not have proper degree, but they practice medicine, and they eventually they are referred as your quacks. So they just have the knowledge that which medicines work, but they do not have proper medical knowledge or degree. So this is an ironical situation also, that we have they are providing some service in rural areas, but yes, so because of their service also we are seeing this issue. So this is a problem. Again, the at the psychological level, what is the problem? So at the psychological level or at the individual level, the problem is at ourself also, our perception level also. So we do not, or we prefer to go for self medication. So what we are saying, that we have a culture of self medication. So see, the culture of self medication, yes, in urban areas that is a problem. That we even in urban areas, even educated people, they prefer to go for self medication rather than go for proper prescription by experts. But in rural areas, if you look at the rural areas, some people might not have the choice actually to go to doctors, because getting doctor appointment and giving his fees or going to a proper hospital might be a costly affair. So when they or poor people, they feel that it will pinch their pockets. So it is basically hitting their earnings. So they might not be interested to go to doctors or hospitals, and then they go for self medication. So it basically reflects our socio-economic condition also, that because of the poor situation, poor economic scenario, most of the people, they are forced to go for self medication also in urban areas. So do you think that those daily wage workers, or rickshaw pullers, or daily construction workers, they can afford good medical support? So in that cases, what do? So somebody will advise them so to take the medication, or they will directly go to the medical shops and they will take medication whatever medical shops advise, so without going to doctors. So that is also a pathetic situation with respect to the health condition in India. So it is a culmination of many socio-economic factors. So that also you can point out. Again, meat industry, easy availability of antibiotics, so less incentive to maintain hygiene. See, yes, that could be the other way around also. That generally there is a trend or a practice that our industries, most of our industries, they do not maintain proper health and hygiene. Even the food industry, the restaurant industry, the food processing industries, you would hardly see that the level of health and hygiene that they maintain. And if you compare with the counterparts in the developed countries like USA or the Scandinavian countries or in Europe, so there the factories would be top notch. So they keep a lot of emphasis, or they pay a lot of emphasis to health and hygiene. But in India, we do not pay that much respect to health and hygiene. And specifically in the meat industry basically, where the poultry or animals are bred so that they could be slaughtered later to be sold. So in such scenarios, the animals are brought or kept in very unhealthy type of environment. So that itself is a cause of concern. Why? Because such industry, such or this meat industry is highly unregulated industry, or it is an unorganized sector. So government regulations are poor or lackadaisical. So that is also a reason. So Again, see, one of the other reason that you should understand beyond the scope of this question is that, see, we know that the microbes or these bacteria will become resistant, but what we have to do is we have to keep on developing new antibiotics. The first antibiotic that we had developed was was penicillin, and after the development of penicillin, we have developed a lot of antibiotics. But after that, there has pharma companies are not much interested in developing new lines of antibiotics or new antibiotics, because they believe that these new antibiotics would be used rarely, or as a medicine of last resort, so there won't be much demand for this. So they are not interested in developing new antibiotics. So government are also not very much inclined, and obviously the private investors are also not very much inclined, because they feel that the market size is less for new antibiotics. So they're not much interested in developing, or they are not forcing the pharma companies to develop new lines of antibiotics. So that those are some of the reasons. So you can pick and choose, and you can write some of the important reasons why this problem is persisting. Now, see, in order to write a conclusion in such type of question, so so what are the available mechanisms to tackle AMR? Critically analyze. So we have seen these aspects. In order to write a conclusion here, what you can do, so you can use, or you can overturn some of the issues that we are facing, or you can mention what are WHO's suggestion with respect to AMR. So WHO has given simple suggestions at individual level. It says that we shouldn't go for self prescription, and we should complete our dosage. We shouldn't share antibiotics. We should maintain proper health and hygiene. That can be a conclusion. Or you can also say that, see, we should move towards the idea of one health. One health means that the health of humans, health of animals, health of environment, they are all interlinked. So we should try to maintain the health of every ecosystem. In that scenario only, we'll be better able to tackle a health or a public health scenario or a public health concern like this. Or you can overturn some of the challenges that we are seeing. So in that way you can write a conclusion also. Okay, so AMR is an important area. So let us move to another question, which is from nuclear science. So let me increase the font size so that you're able to read it. Yes, sir. So let us try to solve this question. India needs a big nuclear bet. Big nuclear bet to keep COP26 promises. Nuclear energy has gained prominence in present times, especially for India. What is the significance of nuclear energy? Why nuclear energy is still a challenge for India? Why nuclear energy is still a challenge for India? So India needs a big nuclear bet to keep COP26 promises. So how we can write an answer to this type of question, or what will be the structure to this question? So let us say you have to write an introduction. And then you have to elaborate on this part, big nuclear bet. Then you have to point out significance of nuclear energy. Significance of nuclear energy, and why it is still a challenge for India, or the bottlenecks still a challenge. Then you can mention what could be the possible way forward, and then you can give one or two line conclusion. Is the structure clear to all of you? Yes, what can we write as an introduction to this type of question? India needs a big nuclear bet to keep COP26 promises. Yes, what can we write as an introduction? So in such type of questions, so uh, you can simply begin by a definition of nuclear energy. What do you mean by nuclear energy? So you can begin by a simple definition of nuclear energy, or you can also point out some data or statistics with respect to nuclear energy. So what do you mean by nuclear energy? So nuclear energy is when we are trying to harness the energy from, or harness energy from an atom or from the nucleus of an atom. So that is what is referred as nuclear energy, and this could be harnessed by either fission or by fusion. So nuclear energy can be harnessed either by fission or by fusion. Yes, fusion technology is much more sophisticated and we haven't developed commercial scale fusion reactors, but in fission we have, commercial scale nuclear reactors. So when we are trying to do fission, we are trying to produce heat, and that heat is utilized to produce electricity. So that is what is nuclear energy. Or you can give a data that India at present produces less than 2% of the electricity from nuclear energy. So it produces only about so it produces at present only 6.7 gigawatt of electricity out of, let us say, around 450 gigawatt of total electricity that it produces. So it is producing around less than 2% of electricity from nuclear. So you can use the data also. Then you have to point out that India needs a big nuclear bet to keep COP26 promises. So in COP26 promises, India has in a way declared that India will gradually move toward net zero by 2070, and it will it 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 will produce most of its electricity, or it will meet its energy demand mostly from renewable sources or non-fossil fuel sources. non-fossil sources. So at present, what we are seeing that around 58% of our electricity or energy consumption is coming from what? From fossil sources. So we want that most of our energy should come from your renewable or non-fossil sources. So in order to fulfill your COP26 promises, we have to cut out the production from, let us say, coal power plants or gas based power plants or other type of power plants which are using or which are producing carbon dioxide in their process. So we have to in a way switch to renewable sources. So we will have to switch from what let us say conventional sources of fuel to renewable like solar or wind or nuclear. So in order to fulfill our promises, you will see that the solar and wind power has certain limitations. So your nuclear has a lot of advantages compared to other sources of energy. That is why we are saying that India will have to bet big on nuclear. So here you have to justify that why India would need to bet on bilingual, sir. Okay, I understand that bilingual would be more convenient to most of you. Okay, I'll try to do that, but see, I have been asked to. I have not been asked basically to take in bilingual, but I'm okay with bilingual also. Okay, so आर यू एबल क्वेश्चन समझ में आ रहा है आपको? ये क्वेश्चन क्या है? ड्रीम यूपीएससी 2027. सो यू हैव योर टारगेट इज क्वाइट अवे. 2027 में आपका टारगेट है. अभी 23 चल रहा है, आपने 4 साल बाद का टारगेट रखा है. आर यू एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड द क्वेश्चन? India needs a big nuclear bet to keep COP26 promises. Nuclear energy has gained prominence in present times, especially for India. See, ये जो questions हम जो डिस्कस कर रहे हैं वो इस ऑब्जेक्टिव से डिस्कस कर रहे हैं कि आप ये मेंस लिख रहे होगे तो आपको ये आंसर राइटिंग में हेल्प मिलेगी या जो टॉपिक्स हैं वो आपके कवर हो जाएंगे फ्रॉम एग्ज़ाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. So these questions are not basic level questions. These questions are of above average level questions or a moderate level, moderate difficulty level question, moderate to difficult level questions. Okay, so if you are able to understand, then it is well and good. But if you're not, देन यू नीड टू कवर द बेसिक्स. आपको बेसिक्स पहले पता होने चाहिए, तब आप ये क्वेश्चन को अटेम्प्ट कर सकते हो. आर यू एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड द क्वेश्चन? ड्रीम यूपीएससी, व्हाट इज द क्वेश्चन अबाउट? क्वेश्चन क्या बोल रहा है? Okay, okay. See, let us move to this part. What is the significance of nuclear energy? So nuclear energy बाकी sources of energy से better कैसे है, आपको वो बताना है इस part में. So how is it better than other sources of energy? So see, first of all, efficiency wise, efficiency of nuclear energy. Okay, Michael. So, efficiency of nuclear energy. If you talk about fission or fusion, efficiency is a million times more than conventional sources of energy. Conventional sources of energy, like when you burn wood or coal or petrol or diesel or gas, compared to that, the efficiency of fission is million times more. In fact, if you compare fission and fusion, fusion is theoretically said to be more efficient than fission. So nuclear has a lot of potential in that respect, that it has very high efficiency. That is the biggest advantage of nuclear energy. Okay, another big advantage is that you can say that it is environmental friendly. Environment friendly because if you're burning wood, if you're burning coal, if you're burning petrol, diesel, gas, in all those scenarios you are producing carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. That is the problem, that it causes global warming. And whatever we are talking about, climate change, that climate change is inevitable, or climate change, we have to fight climate change. So we will have to somehow switch to nuclear if we want to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases. So in nuclear reactors we do not produce carbon dioxide. So in that sense it is environmental friendly. Because it is environmental friendly, it can be a sustainable source of energy. It can be a sustainable source of energy. And for any country, nuclear energy, if a country can rely on nuclear energy, it can ensure its energy security. So for a country like India, which has to depend on petrol, diesel, natural gas from others, so if we develop the nuclear sector quite well, we can ensure our energy security. That is the significance of this. Now, if you compare, let us say, let me let us compare nuclear versus solar in significance only. Let us see, we are talking about, we have to bet big on nuclear. So we have to see, either we'll have to go for renewable, or either we'll have to go for something non-fossil use. Non-fossil, in non-fossil is a broader term which includes your renewable, and it also includes nuclear. So nuclear, in some respect, it is better than even the solar power. Yes, there is a lot of interest in solar power because it is a clean source of energy. It is a renewable source of energy. It doesn't produce carbon dioxide, and and it is quite available, or every country might have access to it. So it is abundantly available. So this is the benefit of solar. But if you look at solar, it also has a lot of problem. Solar, the biggest problem is that you can tap solar energy during the daytime only. So you cannot tap this solar energy in all the areas across the globe. So it is said that there are sunshine countries. Sunshine countries are basically the countries between the tropics. So in those areas only, or those countries can harness energy effectively from sun. So it is depending on the day, it is depending on the area, it is also depending on season. So let us say nowadays it is a rainy season. So in rainy season, solar energy power output would be less. So it has a lot of fluctuations, or there is high degree of variability in solar. So it is dependent on your what time of day it is. So it is dependent on season, it is dependent upon location. So these are some of the problems of solar. But what about nuclear? Does it depend on what time of the day it is? Does it depend on the season? Does it depend on the location? So you can set up a nuclear power plant anywhere on this globe. So it doesn't matter what time of day it is, it doesn't depend on season. So in that sense, nuclear is better than solar. Now let us look at other weakness of solar. Requires huge land requirement is there. So to set up solar panels, so you would have seen this, that it will require a lot of space. So that itself is a big problem for a country like India, where the population is huge and where land is a subject issue of the states. Providing free land for setting up of new the solar power plant is becoming challenging day by day. So that is also a concern. But if you talk about nuclear, so they would require much less area compared to your solar power plants. Now coming to another problem of solar, the another big problem is storage. Storage means that electricity that you are producing during the daytime, at night you won't have access to sun, so you would have to store the electricity in batteries. So battery technology is itself at a nascent stage. We haven't been able to develop very or highly efficient batteries. Yes, lithium ion batteries are quite efficient, but they also have certain limitations. So storage becomes a challenge. It means if you need electricity in night, you can use it in night only if it was stored in the daytime. What about nuclear? If you need it during night, so you'll just switch on or the reactor, so you'll get the energy. So here the storage is no concern, so you need not store electricity. It is like a generator, so whenever you need electricity, you will switch on the generator and you will have access to electricity. That is the advantage. Another problem of solar, a little technical problem, is that solar energy produces electricity in DC, direct current, in DC. But in your homes, all the lighting, all the appliances, all the equipments, they work in what, AC. So you will have to again keep something, an instrument to convert DC into AC. So these solar plants, so they are not very grid friendly. So we have electricity grids, so these grids supply us power, so they are not very grid friendly. But compared to now look at nuclear produces electricity in AC only, so it is very grid friendly. So that is the another advantage. And in solar, what we see another issue is that, let us say during summers, during the peak time of the day, so the demand for electricity increases. So peak demand, it is not able to meet the peak demand, so you need a flexible power system. So during the daytime, during the summertime, let us say during 2 to 3 p.m., so when the more ACs are running, so you need more power. And solar plants are designed for specific power only, so you cannot just ramp up the power production in solar power plants. But in nuclear, it can easily address peak power demand. So you just need to increase the rate of the reaction, and you might be able to increase the rate of electricity production. So it has flexibility in that sense. Are you able to get it? So in that way, you can point out the significance of nuclear energy. So nuclear energy, you can say that it is 24 cross 7 available round the clock. Availability is there. It is environmental friendly. It is highly efficient compared to solar. You have seen so many advantages that it has, and cost wise also. So yes, in the short run, the cost might be very high for setting up of nuclear power plants, but their operational cost is very low. Operational cost is low, so that is an advantage. So in solar, yes, the operational cost might be low, but the maintenance cost could be high to maintain. So these are some of the significance of your nuclear energy. So if we want to tackle environmental issues, if we want to fulfill our promises, then actually we would need to bet more on nuclear. At present the potential is used. Why? Because in India we are producing only 2% of electricity from nuclear. If you compare it with countries like France, in France the two-thirds of electricity they are producing from nuclear only, and that is around 67% they are producing from nuclear. In India we are just producing 2% of electricity from nuclear, so that is a very small number. So we have the potential to increase that number, so we can bet more. It is not that we have already saturated our electricity production with nuclear, so there is no scope for nuclear electricity. But here through statistics you can see that we have a lot of scope to produce electricity from nuclear. Now now let us come to challenges for India. Why nuclear energy is still a challenge for India? So why is nuclear energy challenge? So in order to understand this you need to have some clarity with respect to the nuclear history of India. So nuclear energy is still a challenge or what it is trying to say that see there is a body or a department which is called as Department of Atomic Energy. It had said that by 2020 India should be producing 20 gigawatt of electricity from nuclear sources. So but at even by 2023, so the actual scenario is what, that we are producing only 6.7 gigawatt of electricity from nuclear. So we have missed the target by a far number. So why nuclear energy is a challenge, or basically why we have not been able to produce a lot of electricity from nuclear sources or from nuclear energy? So you have to understand this holistically. In order to understand this you need to have some understanding of the historical background. Historical background. Yes, does can anybody highlight the historical background of this? See, India was not a member of NPT. India did not join NPT. Are you all aware about this? India is not a member of NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty. So India, way back in 1968. So this is a story about 1968. India said that India will not join NPT because NPT is a discriminatory treaty. So you are saying that these five countries, these P5 countries, can have nuclear weapons, but other countries cannot have nuclear weapons. So India said that this is a discriminatory treaty and will not join. Because India did not join NPT, what happened that the countries, these developed countries which were having fuel and which were having technology, they started discriminating India. They said that we will not provide you fuel, they will not provide you technology. So India faced discrimination globally. So India was not able to get, or India did not have access or support from other countries to develop its nuclear capacity, to develop its nuclear capacity because of this NPT only, because India did not sign NPT. And later on what happened? So later on, when in 1974 India went for Pokhran 1. So India tested its first nuclear weapon. So after that, so these Western countries, they got irritated more, and in fact they formed the NSG, Nuclear Suppliers Group. So since India was not a member of NPT, India is still not a member of NSG. India wants to become a member of NSG, but in China keeps blocking India's bid to become energy because it says that India is not a member of NPT, so cannot become a member of NSG. So NSG was formed in 1974, and NSG includes these P5 countries and the all other countries also, which might not have the technology but they might have fuel. So so because of these global regimes, India did not get help from outside countries, from developed countries, to develop nuclear facilities. So whatever development we did, we mostly did it on our own. So we had to develop our civilian nuclear programs on our own. That is why it took us so long. Now coming to another aspect, uh, another aspect is the liability issue. Liability issue. In order to understand liability issue, you have to understand this Indo-US agreement. Yes, are you aware about this Indo-US agreement? Indo-US agreement. So a Indo-US agreement was signed in 2008. So what USA said that yes, you are not a member of NPT, you are not a member of NSG, but what we'll do, we'll give you a waiver. So we will give you a waiver, and you need not become a member of NSG, but still you would be able to get access to fuel and technology from these NSG member countries. So NSG is a group of many countries. So it said that we'll give you a waiver, and you can have access to fuel and technology. And it in return it said that you'll have to open up your nuclear power plants for IAEA inspection. IAEA inspection. See this, you may not, you need not understand as of now. Maybe sometime later we'll discuss this also, IAEA का क्या रोल है. बट यहाँ पे क्या हुआ है इंडो यूएस अग्रीमेंट में कि इंडिया सेड that yes, it will avail the waiver, but what happened that India made a law with respect to liability. So what is this liability? It means that, see, India NPCIL operator है. NPCIL is Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited. It is a 100% government owned subsidiary. So the NPCIL only runs the nuclear power plants of India. So at present India has 7 operational nuclear power plants, and they are being run by your NPCIL. So NPCIL is the operator of these plants, but NPCIL does not make these plants. It means they do not construct these plants. ये प्लांट कौन बनाता है? ये प्लांट जनरली बाहर के वेंडर्स बनाते हैं, जो कि कंपनीज होते हैं, वेंडर्स और सप्लायर्स. So these are giant nuclear companies. So these vendors and suppliers, you'll ask them to make nuclear power plants. So there are companies like Ariva, Toshiba. Ariva जब फ्रांस का है, तोशिबा जापान का है, Westinghouse USA का है. So you'll ask them to make the nuclear power plant. So they will make nuclear power plant, and then they will hand over the keys to the operator. So they will hand over the keys to the operator. They will make, or they will develop the nuclear power plant because they have the expertise in making nuclear power plants, and then they will hand over the keys. Now this liability issue, what is the liability issue here? That in case of a nuclear disaster, who will be held liable? इसका मतलब डिज़ास्टर हो जाता है तो जो लॉस हो रहा है इन्वायरमेंट को, सोसाइटी को, या लोगों की डेथ हो रही है, लोगों की हेल्थ इफेक्ट हो रहा है, तो उन सबका कॉम्पनसेशन कौन देगा? सो ये कंपनसेशन कौन देगा, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी किसकी होगी, इसको बोलते हैं लाइबिलिटी. सो इन यूएसए देर इज़ अ क्लियर स्टैंडिंग दैट इन यूएसए ओनली द ऑपरेटर इज़ लायबल. जो न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट जो चला रहा है वही बस लायबल है. कोई भी एक्सीडेंट हो रहा है तो न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट की ऑपरेटर लायबल है. India made a law and it said that yes, the operator is liable, but the vendor or the supplier या जिसने प्लांट बनाया है वो भी लायबल हो सकता है if there is some material or equipment defect. If there is some material or equipment defect, the vendor or supplier will also be held liable. It means ये जो वेंडर और सप्लायर हैं, प्लांट बना दिया उन्होंने, प्लांट आपको हैंड ओवर भी कर दिया, उसके बाद कोई डिज़ास्टर हो जाता है तो आप उन पे भी लाइबिलिटी डाल सकते हो इंडियन लॉज के तहत. एंड दैट इज़ अ प्रॉब्लम फ्रॉम these companies point of view. So that is why they are not very much interested to invest, to come to India and invest in India and develop nuclear power plants. So the liability issue itself has become a bottleneck in why we have not been able to produce more electricity. So we have mainly we are stuck here. We have not been able to meet the targets because बाहर की कंपनीज हमें सपोर्ट नहीं कर रहे हैं. क्यों? क्योंकि जो लाइबिलिटी इशू है हमारे लॉज में वो एक प्रॉब्लम है. दैट इज़ अ कंसर्न. And then another technical thing that you need to understand in this is India has what is called as in India's 3-stage nuclear program. सी होमी जे बाबा ने ये कंसेप्चुलाइज किया था कि हमारे पास यूरेनियम नहीं है. ही न्यू दैट इंडिया हैज़ ओनली 2% ऑफ द ग्लोबल यूरेनियम रिजर्व्स. सो बट इंडिया हैज़ 30% of the global thorium reserves. But thorium cannot be used directly as a fuel. Uranium can be used directly as a fuel, but thorium cannot be used directly as a fuel. So uranium is less with India, but we have thorium, but the thorium cannot be used directly. So India has what is called as 3 stages of nuclear program. So we'll move from first stage where we'll be using uranium, then in second stage we'll be able to convert thorium into some other material which can be used as a fuel. Then in third stage we will be actually able to use thorium. So what has happened that we have been successful in rolling out the first stage. The first stage has been rolled out, or we have completed the first stage, but second stage हम roll out नहीं कर पाए हैं. Second stage has not been rolled out. Because second stage has not been rolled out, we are not able to utilize thorium, so we are not able to meet the targets also. Is it okay? And see, there are some other global reasons also. Some other global reason that you can mention: nuclear accidents. Because of nuclear accidents there has been a negative perception. So nuclear accidents like Fukushima और Chernobyl. सो इन एक्सीडेंट्स के बाद एक ग्लोबली एक नेगेटिव परसेप्शन हो गया है न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी के टुवर्ड्स, दैट इफ कंट्री लाइक जापान हु और they have a tradition that they build some of the most safest nuclear power plants, even if they cannot withstand nature's fury, what is the chance for a country like India? तो इंडिया में ये एक परसेप्शन है कि जापान प्रोटेक्ट नहीं कर पाया अपने आप को न्यूक्लियर एक्सीडेंट्स में, तो इंडिया कैसे कर पाएगा? तो एक नेगेटिव परसेप्शन है न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी के लिए आफ्टर दीज फुकुशिमा एंड चेर्नोबिल. फुकुशिमा 2011 में हुआ था, होप यू रिमेंबर. 2011 में अर्थक्वेक आई थी 9 ऑन रिक्टर स्केल, एंड सब्सिक्वेंटली सुनामी भी आई थी। तो उस अर्थक्वेक और सुनामी की वजह से फुकुशिमा में डिज़ास्टर हुआ था। चेर्नोबिल में मैनमेड एरर था और बेसिकली एक डिज़ाइन फ्लॉ भी था, तो उसकी वजह से एक्सीडेंट हुआ था। सो इन एक्सीडेंट्स की वजह से भी एक नेगेटिव परसेप्शन है ग्लोबली। और फिर इस फुकुशिमा इंसिडेंट के बाद स्पेसिफिकली ऐसा हुआ है दैट सी दीज कंपनीज लाइक अरीवा, वेस्टिंग हाउस और योर तोशिबा, they did not get orders to develop new nuclear power plants. उनको ऑर्डर ही नहीं मिले न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट्स सेटअप करने के लिए, क्योंकि बहुत ही नेगेटिव परसेप्शन डेवलप हो गया। इनफैक्ट 2011 में न्यूक्लियर डिज़ास्टर के बाद जापान, जर्मनी, फ्रांस, सो ये सारे कंट्रीज़ जो कि हेविली न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी पे डिपेंड करते हैं फॉर इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, उन्होंने डिक्लेयर कर दिया कि हम सारा फेज़ आउट कर देंगे, सारे न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी और न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट को फेज़ आउट कर देंगे 2011 के बाद। तो फ्रांस तो 66% और 2/3 ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी it produces from nuclear. France also declared that it will phase out all nuclear power plants. Germany also declared. Japan also declared. So what happened? That these companies, these nuclear companies, they did not get orders. Because they did not get orders, so they went bankrupt or they faced financial issues. So now in India in 2023, let us say, if they want to come and set up nuclear power plants, they do not have the financial wherewithal. So financially they have become weak. Financially they are very very weak now. In fact Ariva तो bankrupt declare हो गया, उन्होंने अपना नाम भी चेंज कर लिया, दूसरे नाम से कंपनी फ्लोट की है। So Ariva is in bad shape. So these companies have gone bankrupt or they are facing financial issues, and that is why they are not able to come or develop nuclear power plants in India. And domestically, if you look, what are the other reasons? Because of these nuclear accidents, so there is a negative perception and there are protests. So local people are protesting. Local people, आप उनसे बोलो कि न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट सेटअप कर रहे हैं, आप अपनी ज़मीन दे दो। सो बट इफ़ यू आस्क देम दैट गवर्नमेंट वांट्स टू टेक योर लैंड टू बिल्ड रोड or to build a solar power plant, they would be more willing to give their land. Yes, they still in that case also they might not be willing, but still they would give the land to the government. But in case of nuclear power plants, they become very vehement and they oppose. So they feel that the cost of setting up of nuclear power plant and risk of setting up of nuclear power plant will be borne by them, will be borne by the poor. तो पहले आप उनको डिस्प्लेस करोगे उनको डिस्प्लेस करके न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट सेटअप करोगे, उस न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट के जस्ट विसिनिटी में आप उनको सेटल कर दोगे, एंड व्हाट कुड हैपन इवेंचुअली, कोई न्यूक्लियर डिजास्टर होता है तो वही सबसे पहले रिस्क में रहेंगे. सो दैट इज़ अ कंसर्न दैट दे हैव, एंड दैट इज़ वाई दे आर प्रोटेस्टिंग. दे आर नॉट विलिंग टू गिव देयर लैंड फॉर सच प्रोजेक्ट्स. So this is a concern. In coastal areas, fishermen are protesting for protesting against setting up of nuclear power plants. Why? Because ये power plants जो होते हैं, nuclear power plants, इनको water की heavy requirement होती है. तो इसलिए जनरली ये आपने एक ट्रेंड देखा होगा कि न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट्स कोस्टल बेल्ट्स में बने होते हैं या कोस्ट पे होते हैं, क्योंकि सी वाटर को यूज़ करते हैं एज अ कूलेंट. सो देन व्हाट डू, दे गेट द वाटर इज़ यूज्ड एज अ कूलेंट. तो वाटर हीट अप हो जाता है और उस वार्म वाटर को वो कूल करते हैं, बट फिर उसको रिलीज़ करते हैं ओशन में, बट वो उस लेवल का कूलिंग नहीं हो पाता, ओशन वाटर लेवल के टेम्परेचर पे नहीं आ पाता. तो प्रॉब्लम ये होती है कि जो इकोसिस्टम है वाटर की वो डिस्ट्रॉय हो जाती है, उससे फिशेस डिस्ट्रॉय हो जाते हैं और भी जो एक्वाटिक लाइफ है वो डिस्ट्रॉय हो जाता है. तो उसकी वजह से फिशिंग अफेक्ट होती है. दैट इज़ वाई फिशरमैन दे अपोज setting up of nuclear power plants. So these are some of the reasons. So now see, if you look at solar and wind also, so solar और wind के जो per unit cost है, सोलर और विंड इलेक्ट्रिसिटी प्रोड्यूस करने के जो कॉस्ट है दैट हैज़ कम वेरी दैट हैज़ रिड्यूस टू इवन अराउंड रुपीज़ 2.5 so per unit. But if you look at nuclear power plants, the production cost of 1 unit of electricity would be around 4.5 4.6 rupees per unit. So, and solar, the cost is reducing day by day, year by year. Why? Because the technology is advancing and we are able to develop more efficient photovoltaic cells. So that is why they are becoming very efficient, very cheap also, and the production cost is reducing. But if you look at nuclear power plants, their production cost is high. So, so one school of thought says that uh, if we can go for more solar power, which is a more cleaner source of power, then why do we need to go for nuclear power? So that these are some of the problems or concerns of nuclear power. So here, so you can pick and choose some of the most important arguments here, and you can address this part. Now what can you write here in the way forward? Yes, what can you write in way forward? So in way forward, what you can do, you can just overturn some of the challenges, and you can write a way forward. Overturn some of the challenges like uh, how can we reduce the concern of the people, they, or how we can reduce the perception, negative perception of people that they have developed towards nuclear energy. So in those areas, in that respect, you can write your way forward. So you can overturn some of the arguments that you have written here. So liability issue, you can mention that we need, or we can have a broader approach. So more deliberation or discussion should happen between the government and, let us say, the foreign companies, so as to come to a middle ground. And we should be able to develop our second stage and third stages of the civilian nuclear energy program. So we should be investing more. So protest or concerns of local people we need to address. So they might be protesting because of the safety concerns. So we can make nuclear power plants which are much safer. So we could have learned from these Fukushima and Chernobyl disasters, and then we could incorporate more safety equipments in nuclear power plants, so that in case of disasters the damage is less. So you can address those things. And yes, in comparison to solar and wind, you can always say that we cannot just rely on solar, or we cannot just rely on nuclear. Actually, we would need a diversified portfolio of energy basket. So we would need to produce electricity from solar, from wind, from hydrothermal, from nuclear, and we would also need to produce some electricity from coal also. So we should be switching more towards renewable and non-fossil, but still we need to have a diversified portfolio, because we do not know about the circumstances in the future. In fact, during this Ukraine Russia war, so France had declared that it will phase out your nuclear power plants, but it has during this war period, it has said, or it has in a way reversed its stance, and is saying that it will wait and watch. Because in order to do away or phase out the nuclear power plants, it would have to switch to, let us say, gas. But if the gas supply is being blocked or choked by Russia, how can they rely only on gas? So we need to have a diversified portfolio of energy also, because diversification is the only protection against any threat. If we completely rely, as of now we completely rely on coal, but a few months back or last year you would have also come across that these thermal power plants were also undergoing a problem because they were not able to get coal supply. So if we depend too much on one source of electricity, that would be a problem. So diversification is the key. That you can write as your conclusion also. So you can write here a diversification as an idea. We'll take more questions next time. So if you have any doubt, you can ask. Yes, Michael. Any doubts? We can devote some time to doubt clearance. Any doubt with respect to exam answer writing, you can ask, or with respect to the topics that we have discussed. कोई डाउट है या बस प्रवचन सुन रहे हैं आप लोग? नो डाउट्स? Okay, so we'll see you next time then.